Well, I want to talk a little bit about blood infection. Blood infection is something that could be deadly big time, because when you have, a lot of times what can happen is you can have either an ulcer, you can have an infection in your kidneys, infection somewhere on your body due to an injury, then it gets throughout your bloodstream and it continues all through your body. Then often it's deadly unless there's antibiotics. But what do you do if there's no antibiotics available? I know the FDA does not approve of these instruments or these various techniques that are using frequencies to kill microbes. But by this time, there's getting to be so much anecdotal evidence, if you want to call that anecdotal evidence. It's almost like one doesn't go with the other, because evidence means it's an absolute fact. Anecdotal means, well, it's kind of like hearsay. But there's too many people saying it works to ignore these vast amount of voices who've been using some of this quote-unquote alternative technology. Now, I did put a video out recently on, I'm not going to rehash this again, about Spooky Central, the contact mode. Very easy to use. You turn it on, basically turn the big machine on, and you turn on a little switch in the back, and you have the thing plugged in. You have the two handhelds, or you use the TENS pads, and it puts this frequency through the body at 100 hertz a second, 100 hertz, which is 100 cycles a second. And each cycle, it's also doing a PEMF, a pulsed electronic magnetic field, and a 320 volt spike, which lasts for only half a millionth of a second. That spike pretty much kills every microbe there is. Now, the biggest problem with contact is that it may not get deep inside the body where there's a problem. Where there's an infection in an organ or something, or deep within the body. Say it's an infection deep in your bone marrow. Maybe it can't reach there. But it will certainly reach your blood supply. So one thing I want to emphasize is that that's something where a lot of people ought to keep in mind, that blood infection is one of the reasons why things spread around and become deadly. Like, in other words, if you have one area in your body that has a cut and it gets infected, yeah, it's one thing if it gets infected right at this spot. Then it spreads. How does it spread? It spreads through the blood supply. Now, if you can keep the blood supply from being infected, major difference. And I don't want to make any claims here, but of course, the deal is, I'm going to have to make claims. I mean, it's almost like, how the hell are you going to freaking put the information out without making some kind of indirect claim? And I know the old adage is, there are, famous outlaws and there are successful outlaws. But there are no outlaws that are both famous and successful. So, by me putting this information out, it's probably not a smart thing to do, because the FDA is watching this. But what am I going to do? And the other thing is, I don't sell the junk, but the other thing is this. The people that work in the government that are enforcing all these damn rules against people that are, and I'm way more honest on this shit than other people are, I can tell you that right now, because I don't have any financial affiliation with anybody. And number two is, I called out a lot of the big exaggerators out there, like Dr. Robert C. Beck, Bob Beck, who claimed he had a zapper that cured everything. And I said, no way. And I take a lot of heat for it. I take a lot of heat for when people say colloidal silver cures Ebola. I says, really? Maybe nano-silver injected in this blood might do a lot of good. But to say something cures something. But what I'm saying is, in the absence of antibiotics, which may be the case, as we go into problems in the economy, which we already can see are coming up, you should have some of these frequency devices on hand. One thing I like, too, is this, I know I got a few of these, I got 4 of these Parazappers. One I think that's pretty damn reasonable, it does quite a bit, is that Parazapper CC2, constant current 2. And because of the MX mode, it's got the 30,000 frequency mode. There's 4 frequencies in there, and it's got a Clark mode around the 2,000 frequencies. Those I use the most on this damn thing. Those I use the most. And the other ones are good too, but those are the ones I use the most. Even this thing, if you're wearing the wrist straps or something, or a wrist strap to an ankle, opposite ankle, and it's connected by a positive and a ground net electrode. Even this thing, which I have several videos on, this thing I'm going to tell you, I more than likely, just because of the positive offset, will work very good against blood infections. And I'm talking about last ditch stuff here, not that you do this and you say screw the doctor and don't take antibiotics. I'm telling you as last ditch, when you got no other choice. Because I think the situation's coming down in the economy that it's going to go that way. Maybe that's negative conspiracy thinking, but maybe I'm not wrong about this. Because, you know, I got this flag up here. It's called this is actually the Roman flag, if there ever was one. You know, the Senate and the people of Rome, the Roman eagle. You know, there was a time when people in Rome lasted a hell of a lot longer than the USA, even though in a lot of ways we're kind of rebirth of Rome. You know, because our empire actually goes far beyond our borders. That's another thing. But there was a time that people thought the Roman Empire would never fail, ever. And I know people that are in government a long time think, hey, it'll never fail, my pension's secured. Well, you know what, maybe your pension's not secured. Maybe your freaking medical's not so damn secured. So maybe you better pay attention to this crap too, because even though I don't have all the answers, I've been finding out the best portable zapper type device, which is like a frequency generator for the money, is this Parazapper jobber thing. This thing's your best one for like a zap in the world of zappers. And don't tell me they don't work, because these things, there's too many. I don't think they work every time. I know that. If they worked every time, they would be really famous, but they work more than enough times. It might be a 50-50. I don't know. Maybe it's more than 50-50. Depends on how much you wear it. That's the other thing. So if you got blood poisoning, if this is the only thing you got to do is, you think it's a joke, fine. I know if it's the only thing, if I had no other options and I had a blood infection, let me say, not a poisoning, but a blood infection, what I would do is I'd use this 8 hours a day or more, if that's the only thing I had. I think the Spooky Central, which is big like that, and it's more money, with just even the contact mode alone, would do wonders against blood infection. And the real reason for that is that 320 volt spike that lasts a half a millionth of a second for each cycle of the 100 hertz. That thing's, I think, so I guess that's doing that 100 times a second, right? Because it says it goes for each cycle, right? So there's 100 hertz, which means 100 cycles of a frequency in a second, so it must be doing it 100 times a second. I assume that 320 volt, half a millionth of a second spike. I don't see how any microbes can survive that. Now, obviously, you can't reach into the bone marrow and all that type of stuff. I don't think it can. But it would sure work very well to purge the blood of microbes. It should. And a lot of people aren't thinking of this. I don't think there's too many of these units out there. That's one of the things, too. And that's one of the reasons the word's not getting out, because there'd be a lot more feedback if people had the big Spooky Central units and they were using them more extensively. And the other thing is, you can't charge people. You might hear a little buzzing noise in the background on this. That's a spooky remote thing running right now, remotely connecting my DNA to a holder, Mobius coil holder. I think that's what it's called, something like that. Maybe some of you, I'm not using the right technical term. And it's sending the frequency to my DNA in my body right now. That method, I'm not sure how fast that would work for a blood infection. I'm a little iffy on the remote. It's too space age sci-fi sounding to make it seem like to me to believe it. But anything with contact mode or anything with plasma, I do, I can physically know that the frequencies are being sent to the body, because I can measure them with an oscilloscope, which I have. I got a cheap one, but I got one, right? And I know it's sending those frequencies, and I know that some of these frequencies, even though they're not, some of the frequencies used are not the real original right frequencies, I know they got enough evidence out there from enough people using it for some of these frequencies, some of them anyway, that they work wonders. And the positive offset's the other thing that works. That's why the zapper works very good. Even though it's got positive offset and 29 frequencies, probably the positive offset is probably the main thing that's working, but 29 frequencies helps a lot too. And this is only, I think it's 159 or something. Small 1.9 volt battery. That's all it is. But your Spooky Central, you know, you're right, you pay a couple $1,000 for it or so, whatever it is, even with your, plus your computer. And that thing, I think that thing would freaking wipe out a blood infection, no problem. I wish I could test it. You know, I can't put an ad in the paper, hey, all you people out there with a blood infection, don't go to the hospital, I was going to test this thing out on you first. That ain't going to fly. That ain't going to fly. And I don't think there's enough units out there right now to get enough feedback to say that it works for sure. But the theory behind that, not just the 100 hertz cycle that you're getting the body, you know, the contact mode, which the contact mode, the frequencies definitely go into liquid, which is the blood. Like a matter of fact, when this thing was demonstrated on water, you could see all the pathogens were wiped out in the water. You can't demonstrate it on a body or show anything doing it with the blood, because then it's showing, then you're selling a medical device. But quite obviously, you can infer that, well, if it works against the water, in the water, against the pathogens, why wouldn't it work on the blood? Because the blood's liquid and mostly water as it is, right? I don't know. Guess you can't infer that, right? Now, the Spooky Central should even be much stronger, but though it's not portable and it's not it's cheap, but it should work much better. Now, what gets me is, how come, you know what gets me? People in the government are almost like, you know, in a way it's risky for me. I'm actually, you know, maybe I'm painting myself in a corner too by saying this shit. Oh, you said this, you said that, I don't know. But I'm trying to give straight information here, and I'm not selling the product, obviously, but people in the government actually are kind of painting themselves in a corner, because I strongly believe this stuff, this technology works very, very good. And it's not just like a belief that I just happen to believe it. No, there's too many people that have gave good feedback on these devices when they used them enough. But people in the government, sometimes, someday they're going to have a sickness and they're going to have an incurable blood infection. Maybe they even picked up in a hospital when they were in there for some other procedure. And, you know, the standard treatment is going to be these antibiotics, and they're not going to figure out, maybe they're not going to figure out what the right antibiotic is, and you're going to die and have a horrible death. And the reason for that is because you were not allowed to try something else while you were in the hospital. Like, in other words, that Spooky Central unit putting that 320 volt spike every cycle for a half a millionth of a second, more than likely it's going to wipe out every pathogen in there. So any infection that's in the blood, more than likely it should be gone, right? But you're not going to be able to try that, because if you worked for the government and you retired from the government and you're going to be getting government health care, they're going to give you the standard junk, which is all hooked into the pharmaceutical industry, which you're protecting. So, you know, it's almost like karma's a bitch, you know? So I know what I'm doing, and, you know, maybe eventually I might be making these videos from the Smoky Mountains in Tennessee in a hideout for something, because, you know, what's going on, the way things are going around in the world, that you can't say crap anymore on the internet, you know? It's terrible. If you say anything against the freaking big powers and the big money, we're going to demonetize your video and blah, blah. Well, whatever, man. I don't know. I don't know. And I'm still going to be putting this stuff out, because I got to tell you the truth. I got to tell you the truth as far as I know the truth. You know, I can't freaking put out a multi-million-dollar study and tell you, oh, yeah, this is definitely the truth because I backed it up with all these triple-blind studies. Well, I can't do that. But I already know there's a lot of fake alternative stuff out there, and there's a lot of disinformation agents out there. The two devices, I think, for as far as electronic medicine goes, if you want to call it that, electronic healing device, I don't know what you want to call it. Maybe it's not electronic medicine, whatever you want to call it, but I guess it's medicine. The Parazapper is the best deal for the money for the Zapper territory, which is like a little frequency generator on positive offset. And when you're talking about Rife technology, which is even more than what original Rife did, I would say the Spooky Central unit is the best deal going for sure. Now, if you want to talk about other ways you can get rid of a blood infection, I can tell you 2 other ways I know for sure it would get rid of a blood infection. One is intravenous nano-silver, like a ultra-refined colloidal silver, intravenous. Anything that touches, it destroys any microbe safely that's harmful. Any kind of bad microbes, it destroys them very safely, the nano-silver. If you put that by IV into your blood, be gone. Have fun getting that done in a hospital. They won't do it. Number 2 would be intravenous vitamin C. That would get rid of a blood infection, no problem, as long as enough of it's given. You could get that in a hospital by court order. You get a court order, you hire an attorney, and you get a court order, and the hospital's gonna have to comply if you get it done fast enough. I mean, it depends, because by the time you go through all that the person would be dead maybe. But intravenous vitamin C would work against a blood infection. Those things I know would work. And they're proven, documented. But as far as the electro things, the things I like about the electro methods is that, first off, a nurse cannot even give intravenous or start an IV unless she's got an order from a doctor. And on top of it, like you're dealing with, the doctors can't do it or the hospitals can't do it because it's not the standard operating procedures for them. You'd have to get a court order to get intravenous vitamin C, and I don't think you can even ever get intravenous nano-silver, like at least in the United States. So what do? I'm going to tell you Spooky Central and the Zapper. The cool thing about the Zapper is you could probably sneak this little bad boy in the hospital and they wouldn't even know it. With the handhelds. Well, let them hold those handhelds for while I'm visiting for a couple hours and see what happens. I mean, what the hell? I mean, these things are not free, but they're not that expensive compared to like doctors' salaries when they get $500 an hour or something. This thing's like $159, and you just keep using it over and over again. You put a rechargeable 9-volt battery in it, and you just use it, use it for years. Right? So, anyway, just want to put this quick video out because I've been hearing that, the FDA is getting really bad with people making claims, and I'm like, well, the only thing I can do is I claim to know some anecdotal evidence, whatever, suspiciously good evidence. But a lot of people have been using these successfully. How come more people aren't using them? I don't know. It's like, what do you got to do? Advertise a bunch of, people out there, Hollywood stars. Hey, I use the Zapper. I don't know. What do I do? To each his own. Do whatever the hell you want. But, a lot of times they say the truth is mighty and the truth shall prevail, but I don't know if the truth's going to prevail because it seems in our current modern society the only thing that prevails is gimmicks and bullshit. This thing's been, and I know there's stuff on the internet that knocked this product, but they're disinformation bullshit. I'm going to tell you that right now. But I know the Zapper doesn't work on everything, but it works enough that it's worth a try. The Spooky Central, I think if you set it up the right way, I think it's got the potential to work on every damn thing. I think it's got the potential to do that. And even the contact mode alone is probably stronger than any Zapper out there. So, I don't think there's I don't know how many Spooky Central units have been sold globally. There's probably not too many. And so we don't really know. And I got a feeling once the word gets out, say they sold like, 1 million of them, and all these people are coming back saying, yeah, it worked great, it cured this, cured that, the FDA is going to come down on it because the FDA is just the enforcement arm of the big money medical. And like I said, if you work for the government, it kind of comes around and bites you in the ass anyway, because if all these things I'm saying right now, I think they do work very well. I've been researching this shit for years. I mean, I've thrown out a lot of information I got that was suspect, and I think it was planted stuff. And of course, my flag fell down, of course. There you go. Rome just fell, just like the United States is going to fall. And, that's probably going to be the problem. People in the government are thinking, oh, it's going to last forever. I'm going to have all my checks, and everything's going to be fine, and I'm going to have my medical. Well, maybe you're not. Maybe you're not. Maybe you're going to be like in the rest of the boat with all of us other people out here, right? So, anyway, my job is to tell the truth on stuff. And honestly, I took a lot of heat on the internet for, one, criticizing Bob Beck. I don't know, criticizing a couple of those people with their Ebola cures, because the people that are into this alternative stuff, as soon as they hear alternative, they think it works guaranteed. A lot of stuff that's alternative, some of it's garbage, man. Some of it really is garbage. There's disinformation agents out there. But for my best knowledge, the two best things out there is this and Spooky Central. So, over and out.